Okay, this is chapter 8 of Zodiac. 8. Joseph DeLuise. Sunday, January 4th, 1970. Joseph DeLuise, a Chicago psychic, felt that he had been getting mental transmissions from Zodiac for about a month. He had received impressions that for the killer the excitement of murder was over and that Zodiac wanted a safe way to surrender to the police. Most amazingly of all, DeLuise had begun to see a mental picture of what Zodiac's true face looked like. DeLuise had gained national fame 2 years previously when he predicted the Kennedy family would be touched by tragedy involving a Kennedy around water. 2 months later, Senator Edward M. Kennedy's car plunged off a Massachusetts bridge into a canal at Chappaquiddick, and a secretary with him, Mary Jo Kopnick, was drowned. The dark, lean, serious, and almost satanic-looking mystic, aged 43, ran a Chicago hairdressing supply business and had been raised in the tough neighborhoods of Chicago after his family came from Italy. Even in Italy, at the age of 4, he claimed he had the ability to see the future. He predicted a major bridge disaster on November 25th, 1967, and less than 1 month later, December 15th, the Silver Bridge that spanned the Ohio River at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, collapsed. 46 people were killed in the catastrophe. 3.5 months before the arrest in the Sharon Tate murders, the seer pinpointed the hideout in Texas of one of the suspects, accurately described 2 others who participated in the mass murders, and foretold the number ultimately involved. In September 1969, he predicted an air crash over Indianapolis and gave the time of the tragedy as 3:30. A month later, an air crash occurred at 3:31. DeLuise, known as the Prophet of Specifics, spoke to Bud Crescent of the Toledo Times-Herald in an exclusive interview and told what he had seen from 2,000 miles away. "I keep getting the word Berkeley," said DeLuise over the phone. "I don't see him in Toledo or living there, but I do get strong impressions he is living in Berkeley or recently lived there. I feel he is highly nervous out inwardly. He doesn't like to drive a car. He'd rather be on foot. I don't know why I get this feeling, but I feel he is very mixed up and that he can be helped. I feel he has a little box in which he keeps things. I get an impression about stones. He should get rid of these things. He has a box in which he has certain things he's saving. When he looks at them and runs them through his fingers, it causes him to do hideous things. I feel he should get rid of them as a part of turning himself in. Zodiac has done this because he didn't have guidance. At a young age, he spent time in a reform school type of institution. He didn't have a father's guidance. A big change took place in his life at the age of 13 because he unjustly was accused of something. I don't feel he was guilty." Mental pictures of what Zodiac looked like had been flooding the psychic's mind for almost a month, constantly merging and changing. The image that remained clearest to DeLuise was that of a man about 28 years old, approximately 5 foot 8 inches tall, somewhere between 135 to 145 pounds, with a slightly undernourished look. That's not true. The killer had silky, darkish brown hair that he normally wore in a pompadour, but as a disguise combed forward. "I don't think Zodiac wears glasses," said DeLuise. "He's too vain to wear them even if he needed them. He uses them only as a disguise." The Chicago seer felt that Zodiac used drugs that had damaged his brain and given him a persecution complex. Drugs that kept him high, although in the case of the Berryessa murder, he was taking some sort of depressant. DeLuise had vibrations he had received DeLuise said vibrations he had received told him that Zodiac had resorted to speed and goofballs, which he took before his murders. "This man is transmitting," said the psychic. "Only people who deal in this type of extrasensory perception know each other. I hope I can prove to him in some way that I want to help him." DeLuise planned to meet with Chicago police to help develop some sort of composite drawing of his vision. The seer felt that the killer might be a Scorpio or Aquarian because of the figures 11-2 and 2-11, which he kept receiving, standing for February 11th or November 9th. Because he continued to receive the impression that the killer wanted to turn himself in DeLuise decided to come to the Bay Area at his own expense to help Zodiac find peace of mind. Tuesday, January 20th, 1970. DeLuise arrived in San Francisco at 7 a.m. and was met by his West Coast representative, Christopher Harris, who had flown up from Hollywood. The psychic arrived in Toledo at 2 in the afternoon and went directly to VPD officers, took him to the site of the Jensen Faraday murders, wondering if the months that had lapsed between the attack and his visit would affect his ability to pick up impressions. DeLuise had told them there was no time in extrasensory perception, and the difference of a year would not weaken his psychic concentration. Next, DeLuise visited with Napa law enforcement officials who went over the details of the Lake Berryessa slaying. DeLuise got new feelings about the killer involving horses and a white dog, loneliness, love of flowers, and intense hatred of police. The seer suggested that the killer may have applied for work in law enforcement and been rebuffed or been an outpatient in a mental hospital. The words Roth and Field and a picture of a small bridge 9 miles south of town flashed into DeLuise's mind, but he was unable to tell what meaning they had in solving the riddle of Zodiac's identity. He told police, "I will stay until the weekend, but I will stay in San Francisco. I feel it would be more dangerous for me to stay in Toledo. I can't explain why, I just feel that way." In San Francisco, DeLuise was not allowed to touch any of the physical evidence from the Stein case and came up with no impressions. Sometimes just touching these things triggers impressions, brings a name. It's called psychometry, he said, but the police were unmoved. For 3 days, the psychic pleaded over television and radio for the killer to surrender, but he never did. The psychic returned to Chicago.